What is up, guys? This is Misfit. Welcome back to Overtakes, and today we are going to be discussing the off-season. We're underway in the off-season. We had a lot of stuff happen in the last week. I wanted to let some of the dust settle on some of it. I knew a lot of stuff was going to be happening, and we would miss potential free agent notifications, and I wanted to wait for the document that was promised to us from John Spector to drop with all of the contracts and who's expiring and who's signing and signed up and all that kind of jazz. And also, I've been watching the wires and Twitter and Twitch streams and all kinds of stuff, just seeing if I can pick up on anything that anybody's doing. And then we also had some other articles that I read, but we'll get into some of that in a minute. First, I want to thank everybody for joining me. Thank you very much. Everybody on YouTube, thank you very much for all of your support that you've been giving me. It's been great. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And if you're new, you just came in here to talk about Overwatch League, potentially a little less as the off-season wears on, but right now we're right in the thick of the looking for teams and free agents and all that kind of stuff, so I'm going to be doing a lot more stuff. I wanted to let some of the, like I said earlier, some of the dust settle with the early initial stuff, and then, get out a complete list and start talking about it and where we think people are going to go and all that kind of stuff, all the important dates that we're going to need. But thank you very much, and if you're new, like I said, thank you. Please hit a like, hit a subscribe, and come join the fun. We're going to be talking about Overwatch League, until the season starts again, where guys are going to go, potential for team rebuilds, and that looks like we're going to have a few of those from the ground up. But first, all right, so we've had a couple of different things go on. We've had, some time to process the grand finals, and now the crazy season begins. This is where all the teams' contracts and players' contracts, I should say, we start seeing coaches get let go and picked up, things like that. The off-season gets a little hectic at first, and then it kind of settles down for a little bit, and then we see where teams are at, and then we can start figuring out where we think they could possibly finish once we get a format for the league, when it's going to start, and all the whatnot and what have you with that. So the first thing I want to talk about today, Yiska, you guys know him from Tactical Crouch and being on different podcasts and being just a great writer and general Overwatch League expert. He's been on different things along the way, and he's great for the league, and he speaks his mind, talks about a lot of different things. He's very insightful. But he wrote an article for GG Recon, and it was going over just some of the stuff he's heard about what could potentially be the season format. And I'm gonna say, to start off, I'm not a big fan of where this potentially could go. I'm not opposed to all of it, but some of the points in here are a little, I wouldn't call it disconcerting, but they're things that I don't want to see necessarily. We don't know what's going to happen with Overwatch 2. This is the first thing. Now, there's potential that it's going to drop. They're going to drop maybe a beta. I wouldn't necessarily call a beta for a PvE game. I would call it some kind of early access, something where you're getting an early jump onto Overwatch 2, because it's mostly going to be PvE. Yes, they're updating a lot of the finer points of the regular Overwatch game. They're updating the graphics, and they're going to be changing a bunch of different things. Obviously, we've seen a lot of the PTR stuff and the experimental patch stuff where they're trying to balance out heroes and everything, and the game is in a really good spot, actually. Right now, there's a lot of valuable things you can do. It's more fun than it's been in a long time. We don't know where that's going, and that's the big elephant in the room with this, in my opinion. So we have Overwatch 2. Most likely they're going to make some announcement at this BlizzCon online thing at the end of February. So that puts you at February 20. Usually around that time, maybe the week before, Overwatch League starts. So you usually get around Valentine's Day. The league has been starting the last couple of years. So they want to make an announcement at BlizzCon. I don't think they want to start the league without them having the Overwatch 2 because of the new game mode. They want that in there, and it's going to be in there, as they said last year, it's going to be part of the Overwatch League. So you got to give these guys some time. Potentially that drops then, and they're talking the season starting in April. That's a little late. I think you could start a little earlier, but it's really hard to say what Overwatch 2 is going to contain. If they're dropping 5-6 heroes, all right, I might get behind that. You can't just drop 5 or 6 heroes and say, okay, here you go, here's the league, start. But I do think it's a good way to promote Overwatch 2 with the league is, while this early access, beta, whatever you want to call it, thing is going to happen, if it happens, then unless it's earlier or later, depending on the state of the world at that current moment. I will put that disclaimer in there as well, because you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. I mean, and there's also COVID related things too that are involved in what they might want to do. But I was thinking you could start at mid-March, give these guys, obviously they're going to have access to some of the stuff before any of us are, and they probably have to sign NDAs and all that kind of stuff, and watch what they're streaming and all that kind of thing, because you can't just drop all the stuff onto a pro league and say, here you go. If they're dropping 5 heroes at one time and a bunch of maps in a new game mode, you're just going to give them the same amount of time we've had to process it. They're going to want this to be fleshed out a little bit and be able to play. I would like to see it like somewhere around mid-March, that way you can promote the Overwatch 2. We're watching these pros play the new maps and the new game mode and seeing, what some of the viable strategies are going to be before we dive into there. I think that would be kind of fun. I mean, as far as it going full live. There's that, and then there's a couple other things, just because of the COVID thing, like we were saying. Now, they're saying that the season potentially could go, this is a proposal to the league owners and the teams and all of the important people in the league that the league has given them, allegedly. This is the rumor, the report, whatever you want to call it. It's not concrete, but this is what Yiska says in this article. And I'm paraphrasing a lot here. So it's basically going to go from April to September, and you're going to have the separated, we would have separated divisions again like we did last year, with the one exception, and this is a big exception, that New York and London go back to NA. You would be left with 5 teams in APAC. Now, to compensate for this, and if they're playing regular season games, and there's going to be potential tournament formats and stuff like that, if you're playing regular season games with only 5 teams in one division, that is fucked. There's no other way to put it. No. And then the other part about the Asian region is with the tournaments, they're going to slot in Korean contenders and Chinese contenders team and then a wild card from each one of those into these tournaments. If I'm a team owner of the Guangzhou Chargers, any of the 5 teams over there, I'm not for this. First off, 2 or 3 of these teams are rebuilding. So you have guys that have no synergy yet, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you're playing in the league, and you got to work through that. But if you get bombed by Runaway or one of the Chinese contenders teams or something like that in one of these tournaments, your brand value goes in the shitter, man. It's just simple business. Other things, now, other leagues do things somewhat like this. You see, like in Premier League, where if you suck, you drop down to the next level. I don't know 100%, like, I'm not a soccer guy, but I know if you're a trash team, you're out of the Premier League. If you win the other league, I believe you go up. Stuff like that, I'm kind of okay with that. But throwing minor league teams essentially into a tournament devalues everything that you're working for. So to me, it says, well, if I can build a good Korean contenders team, I can fuck these pro teams, and makes your contenders brand almost better than the Charge or the Hunters or the Dragons or something like that. And if I'm another owner, I'm like, no, get that out. No, we're not playing against minor league teams. I understand the imbalance. That's something that they're going to have to work on and figure out. Whether they go NBA style and do 2 bubbles in different parts of the country, which is what I think they should do, is bubble in Los Angeles, bubble in somewhere, even if it's like North Carolina, somewhere centralized, or in Las Vegas, even on the West Coast, somewhere where you get all these to the Pacific Division, Atlantic Division. That way you have a balance. There's no balance with 5 teams in one, and it happened this year too. And the narrative got all thrown all over the place with, well, APAC's better because there's 7 teams and all 7 teams are good, minus Chengdu, who's kind of okay, and London just got thrown to the wolves. it's stuff like that. And then it's like, well, the only reason why they're good is they're playing Boston, Washington, and Houston, just to name 3 teams. They're playing these teams all the time, so they're really not that good. It brings up stupid arguments, really. And I don't think this is the way to go. The start time I can live with. I wanted to start earlier because I'm a fan. I think they had some good momentum coming out of a great finals. Play it when you normally do, but with the looming Overwatch 2 delay, and Avast said something that I've been on Blizzard with this for the whole time. It's not 1995. Stop taking 6 years to develop something. Send it out there. Put it in beta. If there's bugs, fix them. I want a great product, but you know what? I want a product at this point. We've been told about this for a year, and now it's screwing with the league. In that, COVID really screwed with the league, screwed with everything else. So their timeline probably got pushed back, but I don't understand why they didn't even do the online thing. They moved it to January, or to December out of November or something like a month. All right, I can get. It has to do with, I'm assuming, with the development of Overwatch 2. And it's not ready, and they want to drop something, so they put it to February. But spending a lot of time on this, but the format of the league, I'm not a fan. Read the article, guys. I'll put a link down to it below. It's on GG Recon. It goes into a lot more in-depth with some of the other points and things like that. The league intends to have some LAN competitions and things like that without live audiences. It also goes on to say some stuff like, depending on what happens in Asia, if this proposal goes through, they could have some live audiences. I'm okay without live audiences. Give me some LAN. Bubble these teams like the NBA did. It's in a similar size group of people. It's not like the NFL trying to do that, where you're trying to bubble. Each team has like a 50-man roster plus 150 other 200 other people, or trying to bubble a small city. You have 20 teams, and you have up to 12 players on each team, and staff and production people and all that kind of stuff. You can make this work. Securing sites might be the hard spot, but I think in the current climate, a place like Las Vegas, or even if you went to North Carolina, Washington, Philly, I think they're still building their little esports mecca for the Fusion. There's places where you can get a studio, something where you can do this. I like that option more than doing a broken up thing. And also, I think, and we'll use this as kind of a lead-in. Now, if I'm a free agent and I'm Korean and I see all these teams have players that they've let go, I'm Korean, I don't have to leave. I'm going to go for those teams first. If I can stay home, with your choice of Guangzhou, Hangzhou, Shanghai, Chengdu, or Seoul. I mean, there's limited roster spots, but if you're good and you don't want to do all of the bullshit in case something happens again, like it did at the beginning of last year, where you're in this travel limbo all over the place, it gives them a weird advantage in this current climate. And I don't think that's not fair to the other teams that are going to be, in NA that have all Korean rosters, or rosters where they're doing mixed stuff or anything like that. So I don't think they're looking at the whole picture. If I was a team in NA, an owner, there would be a lot of points that I would be a little, not infuriated, I would be calling a hard nose for me. Bringing in contenders, one of them. I wouldn't call it, all right, devalued might be a word. I guess it's the best word to use. Cheapens, devalues your product. And off chance you get beat by that team, you're eternally done. But and the distinct advantage of teams having the option of saying, well, we're going to be playing here. You're going to be close to home. You don't have to travel. Yeah, you get your visas and stuff like that for, grand finals and stuff like that if we get to that point. But you're going to be based at home, or closer to it than you were in Philadelphia, or with Toronto, or with Florida, or Houston, or whatever, than mainland United States. So, and if some of those guys weren't really keen on, the culture here too, and they just want to stay home, but they still want to play Overwatch, it's going to be a big draw. I just think it's another unfair advantage. Not too many people have brought up. I just don't think it's a good idea, that system. But that's the news that we've had from that. All right, next up, we're going to be talking about player transactions. So we've had the Overwatch League drop their document that I was waiting for to come out. Goes over all the teams with all the players, their contract status, all that kind of thing, all the stuff that we want to know who's available, who's a free agent, who's re-signed, who is under existing contracts, all that kind of stuff. They finally dropped it. I would just like to say I am glad they finally have gone for a transparency type of thing. It's a word that's overused in Overwatch League podcasts and stuff like that. What we want transparency. We got some here with this. It's fantastic. And we know the status of every player. So it's a huge list and a lot of stuff. It has to be unpacked with this. And there's a lot of fun speculation and stuff we're going to be doing, but a lot of the stuff is the pieces are going to fall back to where they were, probably, a lot of them. But in this weird climate we got going on right now with the uncertainty when the league's going to start back up and all that kind of stuff, all the kind of things we were talking about, don't really know what's going on with this. So it makes it a little more fun, a little more intriguing. But let's go over what this document has to say. Okay, so, in case you're wondering, the volume has dropped a little bit because I had to stop recording earlier in the day and I'm now recording late at night. So obviously people are sleeping and whatnot. So I'm a little more subdued than normal with some of this stuff. I usually get pretty fired up. I'm going to still be fired up with some of it, but you just got to kind of bear in mind that there's other people around. So if you're wondering why I'm a little more quiet in the second half of the video than normal, that's why. So, all right, let's talk about this document. It goes over all of the situations with player contracts. So we have players that are under contract, 2021 options to exercise, which means the teams have extended their player for the 2021 season. Free agent option declined, which means that the player was up for extension by the team and they declined the option to go on the existing contract that they had. The next is free agent. Existing contract is expiring. It's, obviously it's pretty direct. It says what it means what it says. There's nothing to look into on that one. Their contract expired. So they're basically a free agent. They have no contract for any team or anything like that. Then we have free agent mutually agreed upon release. Basically, neither one of them wanted each other, so they're a free agent. Okay, so it has every player listed on every team. We're not going to go over all of that. We're going to talk about a couple key players that are out there that are going to be free agents. And one of the things that I just want to say before we get into this, when you're looking at stuff like I do, I mean, I'm digging around trying to find, who's going where kind of things. But when you're trying to see just casually, just look for LFT. If a guy says they're looking for a team, they're actually a free agent. If you're not hearing anything or seeing anything from them, there's stuff going behind the scenes, probably with their team, maybe with another team, and they just don't want to say anything. But generally, these guys are going to go LFT. There's a lot of players that are out there, a lot of things that are going to happen. A lot of teams look like they have no players on them, but they probably do. They just got to wait to sign them and all that kind of stuff. And you know how they are with the announcements. They're going to want to do big videos and stuff like that, all the fun stuff that's surrounding that. Now, there's a lot of big guys that are out there. And let's talk about, all right, we got Atlanta. They got a couple of guys out there that could be, pretty good looking players for teams. You got Erster out there. He did not perform at all much. Well, he wasn't played much this year, I should say. And when he did, he was kind of okay. But, last year he was great. Declined a couple of guys that, like Dogman, they took a chance on him and they let him go. They seem to have pretty much a few guys they got rid of, and they're looking to fill in a couple of players. Boston has kept pretty much their whole roster, minus a few guys here and there. Chengdu, they seem to be going in a different direction. They got Bacon Jack retired to go to school, which is fantastic for him. A-Ting also retired, and the only guy that they really have on their team right now that is signed is Molly and Leave. So, and everybody else is November 13th. That's a big day. I think that's when a lot of these teams came into the league in 2019 or 2018 when they signed up for the league. It's just how their contracts were worked out at that point. Dallas gutted the whole roster, literally, and they kept Doha, and that was about it. Everybody else is gone. Dallas, the more and more I look at Dallas in this last year, it really was a shame of how things turned out. A lot of it, they literally are paying 4 guys to play different games. Unco, AKM, and Trill. And then if you throw in Zachary at a certain point, before the season or early in the season, he was still on the team and then he left to go play Valorant. I don't like that narrative that's going on there with that. I just think it's bullshit. And, if you don't want to play and you want to play a different game, you guys got to come to a mutual agreement. No, Gamsu retired after the season. He's going back to League of Legends. He played there for a long time. He was a decent player. I think he was a top laner. I'm not 100% on that, but I know he was decent, but he's going back to League of Legends. And it's going to grind that out, and good for him. He might have needed the change, whatever. But yeah, Dallas, and this is coming out on Friday morning, so be wary of this at this point where I say they have no players because they're doing the eyeball posts and that stuff. You know how that goes when people start doing eyeball posts. Florida, obviously, before right after the finals, they released a bunch of guys, mostly pruning the tree, so to speak. The guys like Karayan and Saya, who retired to go play Valorant. Also, another situation kind of like Dallas with that. I don't necessarily like that. It's my team. I'm not giving him any leeway on that, but he was a great player. It was great to see. And he's instantly went over to Valorant and changed his name to Spider. I'm assuming it has something to do with Widow, but he seems to be doing well over there in that, and good for him. They also let go of Byram and Chris, which was the only starter they let go of. And there's some guys that are not under contract that I'm assuming are going to stay, that I would like to see. BQB, Yaki's already under contract. You don't have to worry about him. Fate, potentially, and Gargoyle. I would really like to see them. It's my team, so I'm going to kind of talk about him for a second. I really would like to see them secure BQB and Gargoyle. Those are 2 key components to last year. They're great players. You need to keep them. Fate, I would like to see them sign him too, but I think they could find somebody if they exercise him out. We'll go over some guys that, maybe at the end, a couple of teams will just throw guys out there. Leg Day had a really cool tweet going on, and I threw my 2 cents in there, and we'll talk about that towards the end. Some of the guys I think could go places, which will be fun. Guangzhou's another team that Guangzhou's kind of seems to be starting fresh. Eileen is still on the team, and I believe Krong. And that's about it. I think Shu might be. Shu's got the contract expiring. I thought Shu was already signed up. And Rio is a November 13th. They're pretty much letting everybody go, including Nero and Neptuno and Chara, and they seem to be gutting their whole roster. And the same thing goes to the next team, Hangzhou. They seem to be letting everybody go except for Gushwei and QOQ. And they made an announcement of who they're actually getting rid of. Oh, and I forgot Coldest, and I believe there was one other guy too. Oh, Mika. So they kind of nailed down their support line. I think they can go in a different direction. But Coldest, I didn't get to see him at all, but from what everybody says, he's great. Houston, obviously, we talked a little bit about them. They blew their whole roster up. They don't seem to be keeping anyone except for hydration. I don't know if it has to do with the new with Junkbuck coming in and all that kind of stuff. There's going to be some interesting things going on there. London also blew up the whole roster. They kept Glister, Bernard, and yeah, so they kind of blew up their whole roster. It wasn't that good anyway, outside of Glister and Bernard, to be honest. Gladiators doing some house cleaning. We've had a few notes already. We've had Bishu, Cloudy, Oj already get declined. Big Goose and Shaz retired. Well, Big Goose did, Shaz did not. So they're kind of going for a reboot as well. The Valiant released a couple of players that we know of. Ply, McGravy, Gig was the last guy. New York finally made some noise and let us know what's going on with them. They let go of Nene, Haxall, Who Are You, Hotba, and then a bunch of their guys have contracts that expire on the 13th. Interesting to see what they do. Paris, they basically got rid of No Smite, Smex, and that's about it so far. The rest of them are 2013, or they've had their Fielder is also looking for a team. Which, my God, if you need a flex support, sign that guy. Philly let go some guys and their coach as well. So this is going to be interesting to see where they go. I know EQO has already been reported as not coming, and a big shocker, Chipsa is not. That was a waste of money on their part, but and they're keeping a lot of the guys that you expect. Fury's a free agent, which I find interesting. Boombox is a free agent. He's already said as much, and they kept Hisu. Ivy's also a free agent. They have a bunch of guys that are free agents. It's hard to really say what, where and what they're going to do. The Shock, they have a bunch of guys that are, they've just exercised their option, and they have guys that are under contract. The notables on their team that are free agents, potentially Violet, Moth, and Super, but I would not see those guys leaving. Maybe Moth. I highly doubt it. Potentially Rascal, but they seem to be staying intact. Now, Soul, the next team on here, they're interesting because I know they signed Profit and Gesture. The rest of it's kind of up in the air. A lot of guys on November 13th deadlines did decline. Badosin, that was today. Toby as well. Slime as well. And they seem to be keeping Creative and Gesture and Profit for right now. Also, 2U was also let go, which is a shame, because that guy came in and he just didn't play him. You thought he was going to be kind of a fix for their, potentially a fix for their off-tank woes, but, And there's a few guys on Shanghai. Ding, DM, Dia, the Triple D threat from 2019, is they're all potentially free agents. Fleta, Lip, Fearless, Stan 1, Void, they're all under contract. They re-upped Izayaki and Lee Jae-gon. And Luffy is also a free agent. Toronto gutted their roster. They declined everybody on their roster. So, Toronto going for reboot number 3. Well, reboot 2, roster number 3. It's not to say that some of these guys aren't coming back. You could see that. Depends on what direction they want to go. Coaches, GMs, however they want to do it. Hard to say. And Vancouver, they're basically keeping a couple of guys you expect. They're keeping Dalton and Shredlocked, keeping Rolf. I know Kasa is gone, and I believe Shockwave is gone, and Suna. The Washington Justice, the last team on the list, they are getting rid of a bunch of their guys. They basically are keeping Tuba. They're keeping Tuba and Roar because they both have contracts. That seems to be the way. But, obviously, the whole Decay thing, I know they declined options on Janu, Arc, Aim God, and Stitch. So that's the list. Now let's talk about a couple of destinations of guys. I got a chance to dive in on Twitter. It was out there for everybody, but the couple of guys I think that could move places, and I think it would be very interesting. I'm going to start with, I'm going to go with, the first one I'm going to go with is a big one. Since they got rid of both of their off-tanks, they also declined the option for Bianca and Hotba, and that's in New York. I think Fury would be a fantastic fit there. A lot of people are saying, Meko can go back home. I think Fury's a better fit. I think he's a better all-around off-tank. He can play a wider array of heroes than Meko at a higher level. The Mayhem, I could go on for hours on who I think they should get, but I in that tweet exchange, I said I think they could get Slime and Ivy. I think those would be guys that would be two great fits on that team. I also like the potential for Oj to come to the team, and Leg Day had actually said that a couple days ago. They thought it was it would be a good low key place for him to go. A lot of people are not high on Oj. I think Oj is a good player if he gets in the right environment with the right team, and I think the Mayhem would be a good place for him. But that's a couple of those. I also think we can have some of the Western guys moving around. We're going to see some interesting things go on, I think, with the Spitfire. I think they might try and go full Euro. And I think you could get to see some guys like potentially Boombox going there. You could see a reunion of Boombox and Neptuno. That's a possibility. I know Cruz is out there. There's a bunch of guys that are out there. And now, one of the things a lot of people are high on And I don't think he's going to leave the Shock, but because Junk Buck went to the Outlaws, a lot of people are thinking Moth is going to dive in there with him, potentially Rascal as well. I'm not too much on that. I think Dante comes back. I also think that there's potential for them to go more mixed, because both Harsha and Junk Buck worked in San Francisco. They have a working under an understanding of how to do a mixed roster at a high level. And Harsha was there at season 1, but towards the end of season 1, they got all their pieces starting to fall into place. The Choi Hyobins and the Sinatras and Moth and Super and all those guys coming in. Now, if Dogman doesn't retire or anything like that and goes to broadcasting, which he's really good at, into the casting world, I think he could land in Houston. I think that'd be a good spot for him. Also, I feel that tank-wise, it's really up in the air. Main tank-wise, there's a lot of options out there that are really, really good. There's potential for, picking up somebody from Korea. Also, Super's out there. It depends on what direction they want to go in. You have Super that potentially guys like Fate, Oj. There's some guys that you could pick up and throw on that roster. But I think one of the things that stood out to me, I think Dogman would be a good fit for that team. I'm also thinking Nero going to one of the LA teams, but probably the Gladiators would be the best fit with him and Birdring. I think that would be a really dynamic, over-the-top DPS duo. Now, Atlanta, there's potential for Atlanta to pick up some guys if they go mixed, if they go Western. I really think with Gator, Hawk, Edison, you got a good core there. Gator and Hawk towards the end of the season, they kind of tailed off, but I don't know if they had to do with the rest of the team and all that. They also have Massa still, who also was not as good as he was in 2019. But bring in Fielder onto this team, and I think you're really good. I don't know if Fielder wants to go full Korean. Also for Fielder, I think Hangzhou Spark could be good for him. Guangzhou Charge, potentially, if they decide to keep Shu. That's up in the air, but I think Atlanta with Fielder could be a good thing. There's potential for someone like, you could have someone like Dante come in, and Dante and Edison would be pretty sick. They do share a lot of similar heroes and stuff like that, but we don't know what the meta's going to be. We know nothing about what's going to happen next year, especially with new game modes and all that coming in, what you're going to need. But those are a couple of guys there. All right, that's just a few of my thoughts on, where some guys could land and things like that. And obviously there's going to be a lot more speculation and things as the days and weeks go on. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Glad you could join me for this one. We're going to be talking a lot more, as these things break. We're going to start doing a little bit more of the quick thoughts on what happens when these teams start dropping their team videos and their signings and all that kind of fun stuff. We're going to be all up in that. And then we're going to do a little bit more of a roundup of the year when some of the stuff calms down. Talk about where teams can go, what they need to do. Obviously, we're going to get some signings coming up, so we're going to get a little bit of roster solidification. But I think once it calms down, which is probably going to be in a week or so, and we're not going to hear anything until after a lot of these contracts expire at the end of November, mid-November. And I'm sure we'll be getting some confirmation on league format and all that stuff by then, so we can definitely hardcore dive into the teams, what they're doing, what they did, what they need, all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be fun. So thanks again, guys. Everybody out there on YouTube who's been supporting me, thank you very much. If you're new, please hit a like, hit a subscribe. Don't forget to comment down below. Tell me what you guys think, what your thoughts are on the potential for this new format. Also, tell me what free agent signings and things where you think guys can go, potential landing points. We can talk about that. It's going to be fun. So this stuff is always interesting, where guys land in free agency in any sport, and especially in Overwatch League right now, where the way the contract situation works, it's all up in the air. But that's going to do it. This is Misfit. I'm out. Thanks for joining me. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you on the next one.